Welcome to the Future of Supply Chain, presented by Dynamo. Each episode, we sit down with leaders in the industry as we build the future of supply chain together. Let's get into the show. Here's our host, Santosh Sankar.
Hey folks, welcome back to the Future Supply Chain Podcast. I'm your host, Santosh Sankar. Joining me today is Carl-Christoph Reckers, also known as CCR. Welcome, CCR. Great to have you on.
Well, thanks so much. Good to see you again. Thanks for having me on the podcast. Really excited to be here.
Totally. And, kudos to Andrew Crown for making the introduction.
Of course.
And allowing me to host the great CEO of FleetPulse. We're about to jump into a whole lot of stuff here during this episode, but I'd love for you to just give the quick elevator pitch for our listeners. What's FleetPulse? What are you and the team building over there?
Yeah, great. FleetPulse is a telematics company for trucking trailers. We provide data-driven insights that enable fleets to improve the safety of their trailers and cargo, security, and operational efficiencies.
Amazing. And, up until I met you, I thought that I had a cool abbreviated name because people call me Tosh. But what's the CCR story? How did you kind of get into the world of trucking, trailers, telematics? Give us a bit of that background.
Absolutely. My trucking story started, as I'm sure for many of us, by chance. So 15 years ago, I found myself doing a project for an OEM, a tractor OEM in Portland. And all of a sudden, I'm sitting in a Class 8 truck and I'm talking to trucking fleets, and I'm just hooked. At this point, I start understanding how important trucking is in our economy, and that's fascinating. I had no idea up until that point. And then as soon as I start diving into the business of trucking and really understanding how these companies work, I start seeing opportunities. And opportunities for technology to play a role to deliver something that's simply 10x better and might make lives easier, improve economics, and I'm just at that point I'm off to the races. So next thing you know, I find myself starting a company called Freightstar. This is now 10-ish years or so ago. We were focused on the open deck space, a marketplace for overdimensional freight. And that was the time of digital freight matching. So we definitely dabbled in that. But we realized, again, there were these 10x opportunities. So in overdimensional freight, no one has any idea of what the permits will be like. So we built algorithms to calculate that for you and so forth. And, I learned a lot. And it was again, going deeper into trucking and trucking technology. And, chances are, if you're buying construction equipment or farming equipment, you might still be using Freightstar technology today. So that was that. I got into trucking there, and then it just happened naturally from there. I really was interested in building at scale as the next step for me. And Uber Freight was off to the races. And I had an opportunity to join and help build that company. So I did, and joined that team, and within Uber Freight, I led what we called expansion. So basically the things not dry van, and worked on a reefer, flatbed. We started a trailer pool program called Power Loop, but also the SMB business and so forth. And like I said, I wanted to build at scale, and Uber Freight was the perfect place to do that. And my trucking journey didn't quite stop there. So after Uber Freight, I continued to work in supply chain tech, worked with investors and startup founders on topics they needed help with, whether it was acquisitions, fundraisers, leadership transitions, and so forth. And that led me to FleetPulse. And I am incredibly excited to be at FleetPulse now, and hope we get a chance to talk more about FleetPulse today.
Amazing. Before we kind of jump into the details of FleetPulse, could we just take a step back and do a primer on the trailer telematics industry? That's very much at the core of what you're building at FleetPulse, because as I kind of was doing show prep here and kind of thinking through some of the things we should chat about, it felt like this industry might be having a bit of a moment, if you would. But
it definitely
please
is.
indulge.
It's having a moment. Let's talk trailers. I talk trailers all day, so I love this. Telematics in the cab really had a moment years ago with the ELD mandate.
Yeah.
And on the trailer, that's not quite the same. So the trailer works a little differently, right? You don't have a driver there at all times. So app-based solutions aren't really going to cut it. And the same with power as well. You don't have an engine on most trailers. So the telematics solutions that you can provide on a trailer are simply different. And that's probably also a reason why adoption of telematics on trailers just hasn't been there. And now let's talk about the industry having a moment, or trailer telematics having a moment, which I definitely think it does, because there are a couple of things that are changing. One, the technology is coming around. There are things that you can do now that you couldn't years ago, and they just create tremendous value. Just to give one example, we can talk more in detail later, but we can now look inside the trailer and look at the cargo while it's in transit, and add AI, for example, on top of that to understand loading, understand anyone tampering with the cargo. That just simply wasn't there years ago. But there's other market-related shifts as well. Cargo theft is on the rise, so there's more attention on what can you do to harden trailers to help with the detection of theft, and then simple macroeconomic trends as well. Interest rates are higher, so the old model of just higher or buying more trailers and leaving them around the country, that's probably not the best model anymore, and you want to manage those assets better. There's other mega trends that started in the pandemic. You have more drop trailers, more dedicated freight. Those tend to be trailer heavy models, and in those models, you really want to have more control over the asset that hauls the cargo. So trailer telematics is having a moment, absolutely, and we're here for it.
Why has the trailer been such an unloved and overlooked asset historically? And you articulate why some of that is changing, but is that something that you see is differing as you're out speaking to customers? They start to realize, hey, rates are higher. We're sitting already on a much larger set of trailer assets as a result of the pandemic. But help us kind of understand, because it's really the workhorse of the economy. Truly,
it is. Yeah. You said unloved. I would never say unloved. I work with folks that love trailers every day, and at this point I would consider myself as one of those trailer fanatics. But you're right. It's undermanaged. The trailer has been neglected for years, and we talked about telematics just not being adopted widely. So to me, it comes down to it was a cheaper asset versus the tractor. So when you had a bottleneck in your supply chain and you could throw money at the problem and money was cheap, that's what you did, right? And you just had, rather than managing trailers tightly, you just had a surplus and high trailer to tractor ratios, and that kind of that took care of it. But it's like you said, it doesn't make sense, right? The trailer is where the cargo gets hauled. So having that as a black box doesn't really make any sense. And now that supply chains are digitizing more and more, we talked about the ELD mandate that started in the cab, right? And really digitizing that journey. Also, the load brokering process is now fully digitized at this point. So again, why have a black box in that supply chain? It doesn't make any sense. And that's where we are now, and the industry is coming around to that. And I think everyone is waking up that trailers are the workhorses, are the one of the most prolific assets out there. So that's why fleets are investing.
So you mentioned theft briefly a moment ago, but I went in and pulled some Q3 data from CargoNet, and it looks like theft incidents are up over 15% year over year, 24 versus 23.
Yeah.
And this is a trend that is not going away. Just some, good old fashioned crime, if you would, right? There's nothing like a good heist. But what's behind this? Is it that it's being just reported more, or it's tracked more? Is actually always been the case? Or has something changed over the last few years where we have the bad guys realizing we have a bunch of goodies, and they're not as secure as maybe people would like to think they are?
Yeah, it's a great point, because I think cargo theft is a big, big issue. I will add to that, trailer theft is also a big issue, and we should talk about that as well. So stealing the trailer outright. But back to cargo theft. Cargo theft is definitely on the rise. Those figures you've quoted are probably even understating the impact of cargo theft. And I think it comes down to, you could just get away with it. If you think about the trailer being undermanaged, under-digitized, you had zero tech on it, you didn't know where the trailer was, you couldn't track anyone accessing the trailer or not. So it was just a very easy target, difficult to prevent, difficult to track down, to then investigate. So I think that's just one of the reasons why folks have targeted trailers. And then, of course, in over the road, you have trailers parked in at rest stops or truck stops, so they are exposed. They're out there, but that needs to change, obviously, because it's a big problem, and that's where seamless supply chains break down. So I'm excited that there is now tech to prevent that and to start tackling that.
I've also kind of heard these stories, and maybe this is what you're alluding to when you talk about like the theft of the trailer outright, but where a third party inserts them in and almost spoofs themselves, right, as a shipper, a receiving dock, even a broker, but they effectively can like intercept the trailer, and by doing that, they walk away with both the asset itself as well as the goods inside of it.
Right.
So that's something that we've continued to see, and I call that the white collar side of trailer theft, rather than breaking and entering, just being smart about workflow and realizing where there's gaps.
Yeah, that's the white collar side. that's probably the right way to put it. Yeah.
And so stepping ahead here, we now are entering a world where we have smart trailers, right? FleetPulse is introducing that. What is the value now that we should anticipate, whether we're shippers, carriers, brokers, some other type of stakeholder? What type of value is going to be unlocked throughout the freight value chain as a result of this?
Yeah, at FleetPulse, and our customers really think of the value in three buckets, if you will. One is around security, and we've talked a lot about security today. So security of the cargo, preventing theft, or simply assisting with the investigation of OS&Ds. But then also security of the trailer. We just talked about trailers simply getting lost or stolen, right? That obviously, all of that comes with a cost, right? Whether it's direct cost of having to replace the asset or the cargo, or it's insurance cost. So it's a real cost, and the value there comes from preventing that cost. The other two buckets where smart trailers really add value for fleets. One is around safety. Telematics, just like any other asset that has telematics, should give you in the case of the trailer, roadworthiness. So brakes, lights, tires. What is the status? Is the trailer roadworthy? Helps you both optimize your maintenance, but also simply avoids tickets, right, and citations. And that's both a direct cost, but also indirect cost in optimizing your preventive maintenance. And then the third bucket, and this is probably where we've seen the most wide adoption today. It's leveraging data from the trailer for operational efficiencies. So that can start as simple as just the location. Where is my trailer? Is my trailer within the geofence of a distribution center? when was the in and out time, which of course you can track, but it goes further. Let me see the loaded status of a trailer. Is this trailer like already unloaded, empty, so I can update my in-out times again, or it's ready to pull, available in the pool. So those three buckets. So really security, safety, and then operational efficiencies. That's how fleets use telematics today, and how we talk about the value you can get out of it.
So now kind of thinking about a FleetPulse customer realizing these benefits, right, of trailer telematics, could you just walk us through a high-level case study? Because I think a lot of those points are really interesting. It'll probably get home or hit home even further with our listeners as they kind of realize, hey, like there are people who are actually experiencing this today at the end of December, approaching the holiday season.
Great. So we always start with FleetPulse customers understanding what they actually want to improve, right? What drives the most value for them? So really getting into their business, sitting down and scoping it out. And that's different for the type of customer we're working with, right? A leasing company may want to use FleetPulse to bill by mile or to help in recovery of an asset. But a dedicated fleet may actually want to go deep into the operations, in-out times, loaded status. And those, we together define what are the target metrics that you want to improve, and then, what's the business case for that. Now, for some fleets, that's so obvious that the business case writes itself, and they just want us to deploy as quickly as possible. And we can do that. We have an OEM program where we can even deploy on the line with a number of OEMs. So get FleetPulse installed right there and then, or with others, we have our field team to install nationwide. And some fleets will require us to do a pilot to really prove the value, and we're always open to proving our value. And then we start thinking about so now that we've deployed the tech, how do you actually realize the value? How do you consume the insights that we're generating? How do you consume the data? For some fleets, that means logging into FleetPulse and leveraging our dashboards, which really hit you in the face with actions, and changing their operations so the way they do business that way. And other fleets will consume our data on API. So we go through lightweight integrations, which we've streamlined, and then the data starts informing their processes that way. And of course, you can't stop there, right? We work with our fleets on a quarterly basis, understanding the things that you wanted to achieve back then. Are we achieving them? Are we actually impacting the metrics that you wanted us to? And what else can we do for your business to help you with your business? So we have a pretty strong customer success team. That's what we call it. That is really invested in the long-term success of our customers.
Amazing. The one thing that I also can't help but think about is as we see trade open up further between the U.S. and Mexico. And we've discussed this kind of in passing before CCR.
Yep.
Safety is the number one thing top of mind as I speak to shippers, carriers, other logistics intermediaries. That's not just safety of the people, but also safety of the cargo as well.
Sure.
And so this almost feels like a no-brainer for folks who are saying, hey, we're going to haul freight in and out of the country. You kind of can't run away from a world where trailer telematics, it feels like the default. That's like table stakes. If I was a shipper hauling anything or tendering freight to a carrier to haul, especially between the U.S.-Mexico trade lanes. Is that a fair statement? Are you seeing anything of interest there?
Yeah, so first off, I think we're both speaking exactly the same language. So our mission at FleetPulse is really to raise the bar for the industry by establishing telematics as a standard. And that we talked about how that makes sense and how that adds value. So I 100% agree with that. Now, as you have more folks like either freight crossing the border, but also more parties involved in transactions through brokers or whatnot. Just having a closer chain of custody is just a really smart idea, right? And I come back to again how the tech has evolved, right? There used to be just a GPS, and and even that was not quite tamper-proof. But guess what? We send you the image of the cargo now. That's pretty hard to to mess with or to fake, and it's actually pretty clear to detect anyone tampering with your cargo. So to me, this is becoming more important. We're also seeing interest from Mexican fleets, also from U.S. fleets crossing the border. We work with dealers in Mexico to deploy FleetPulse tech. Actually, funny thing, when I joined FleetPulse, and we can also talk about that journey, but one of the first things I did was trying to understand like who already has FleetPulse, and there are literally tens of thousands of trailers in Mexico that have FleetPulse on them. So we've been in the market for years, and I think it's there. The value is just tremendous, especially around the security Telematics can provide.
So I'm going to progress here, and I think for those who may not be aware, this could be news, but FleetPulse was a spin out of Great Dane, who's I would say one of the maybe most storied brands in and around trucking. Everybody has seen the Great Dane itself, and they've driven alongside. They've had freight hauled inside of these trailers, but that brought along a lot of advantages to FleetPulse. But such events can be like brain surgery. And it is not infrequent that we will be approached by an organization who goes, hey, we have like a really interesting piece of technology, but we don't think we're doing it justice by allowing it to live within our broader organization. How should we think about spinning this thing out? And I would love, given I have you here, to just kind of share some of the lessons learned, right, as a result of that process, because I know there are a lot of others that are listening in who are in a similar position. Yeah.
So just to rearticulate that, since some of the listeners may not be aware, so FleetPulse is actually a 7-year-old company, even though we just recently became independent. And the tech, so the trailer telematics has been developed by Great Dane, like you said, one of the most storied, certainly brands in trailers, but even trucking. And it's been developed to OEM grade, really with all the rigor and all the testing and all the diligence that an OEM would apply to develop new tech and bring it to market. However, Great Dane got to a point where they saw that this could just be so much bigger as an independent company, and that's exactly what we're doing and what we're building now. But the brain surgery or open heart surgery or whatever you want to call it really then came from FleetPulse was already at scale when we spun it out, right? FleetPulse is on thousands of fleets and on tens of thousands of trailers really around the country and in North America. And that just means as you're starting the company, this independent company, FleetPulse, you have to navigate that. And you have to navigate the transition while always, coming through for the existing customers. So one piece of advice that we've really taken to heart is communication. Communicate, both internally with anyone involved who may have preconceived notions in the context of FleetPulse spinning out of Great Dane. There were many folks involved in developing this tech. So actually helping them navigate this change, and there is a lot of change that came with it. And for that, again, we try to communicate as often and as transparently as possible. But the same goes for customers, right? Customers, in our example, had a business relationship with Great Dane. Now the Telematics is a separate company, and that that is a big change. And for some customers, that meant we had to go through new vendor approval process and whatnot. So it just, you have to manage that change head on, and communication helps. And really then, be as transparent and diligent about it as possible.
And, you mentioned FleetPulse is a 7-year-old business that was spun out.
Yeah.
How have you been able to establish a startup culture, right? And like a startup way of thinking? Because that is very challenging when you talk about a legacy org that has birthed this business that you've spun out, that is by all means, or at least, relative to other startups, is relatively mature, right? 7 years is a long time in startup land.
It is.
How have you gone about that? What can we learn and take away from what you've done thus far?
Yeah, culture is a really good one, and a very important one. We had to, again, this was a transition, right? We had to look at the culture that we inherited, the OEM culture. Also, many of the team members that worked on FleetPulse back then under the OEM came over to FleetPulse, to the independent company. So they're now part of the team. And then we added team members. So that's where it gets really interesting, because you have this blend of, like I said, startup culture, and then folks that have spent their careers in an OEM. And I think if we get it right, and when we get it right, we actually bring the best out of both of those cultures together. And that is from the OEM side, really the deep appreciation for trucking and the diligence and rigor, and from the startup side, just moving incredibly fast and agility and having a very strong ambition. So, and that's what we're trying to do, and we do that by being explicit about what's the same and what's what is actually going to change, or what's different in terms of culture or how we do things. And we as a team, we develop our culture together. So we come together, we do workshops that are specifically focused on culture. We do all hands on a very regular cadence, and I'm talking either weekly or bi-weekly, where culture is always one of the agenda points. And then we allow folks that come in that are new to the team to really have an input on the culture as well, and contribute and call out things that that they feel we could be doing better. And then the last thing that I'll mention, we've also thought through what is the right team structure to enable a culture, and that has led us to centralize more of our resources in Chicago, in our headquarters. We can debate for hours about the merits of remote work and so forth, but as we're coming together and especially building this culture, it used to be all dispersed, and now we have more and more team members in Chicago, and that's been working really, really well.
Amazing. I have one last question before I bring us home with some rapid fire. But we picked up that somewhere along your journey, you made note that it takes a very special kind of investor to invest in industrial tech. And perhaps a bit selfishly, I ask, what is this type of investor? What have you observed kind of when it comes to preparedness, attributes, skill sets, how they work with their founders and management teams? What makes them special, so to speak?
Yeah, Tosh, would you know any investors that are focused on supply chain?
I know a couple.
I'm kidding. No, I'm excited that we're connecting, because obviously you are one of the beacons who already has incorporated exactly some of those things I would call out. I think as an industrial tech focused investor, you have to be willing to go deep, and that means that actually you go deep into the businesses that you invest in. You understand them. You think through where you can connect the dots between different ventures in the portfolio, between LPs in your fund, and then making customer connections, making other value add introductions, and And I think that's, you can't expect that from a generalist investor. I will call out a couple more things. Those investors also have to have the right expectations for, time horizons, for example. And, the industrial tech just moves at a different pace. Now that comes with the benefit of when you win a customer, those customers are also there to stay, right? But it works a little different. And then the last thing I'll say, you have to have an appetite for market cycles as well. And especially consumer tech is, you'll always find a consumer. But in trucking, of course, we're still talking about a freight recession. So you just have to be there for it, and not freak out the same or the moment that industry metrics change or shift. And I think if you put those things together, industrial tech is one of the underinvested sectors. I'm bullish on it. Of course, I'm really dedicating my career to it, and I love working with folks like yourself who do the same and who are really all in on industrial tech.
That's amazing. I think your statements around expectations, the pace at which this industry moves, it's not incorrect, but it is very different than perhaps kind of traditional, developer tools or infrastructure software.
Sure.
But you're talking about the backbone of the economy. So one cannot, make these decisions in such a trivial manner. They have to be thought out, sequenced. And once you're in, you're in. I love that. And hopefully more folks will join us.
Absolutely.
This year and in future years, because I totally agree. And maybe we're drinking a bit of our own Kool-Aid, but industrial technology is in sore need of additional technology-centric investment.
I'll do, on the spirit of joining, I'll do one more pitch. FleetPulse is hiring. FleetPulse is hiring actually on all teams, engineering, product, sales, customer success. So come join us. We are growing rapidly. We need a lot of help, and we're hiring.
Amazing. With that, CCR, I want you to bring us home here. I like to end with something called rapid fire.
Okay,
I make a statement. You have 20 seconds just to share what's top of mind. You ready to go?
Okay. Well, let's hit it.
The leader you've learned the most from and why? Okay.
There's one leader who stands out. His name is Joe Davis. And, for the time we worked together, he would always ask me, so what? And he would just hammer that home until I really, got the point of, it's not about doing the work, but it's actually about, creating the impact and learning from it. And that has changed the way I work.
Amazing. A supply chain prediction for 2025.
A supply chain prediction for 2025. Unfortunately, I'm a little less bullish on the market. I think we're not quite out of the recession yet. At least I'm not seeing that. I think there's just uncertainty in the economy, and that means folks are still holding back. So I think it's going to be more of the same. But of course, I can't wait, for things to open up and for rates to go up, which then trickles down. But I think we'll probably see H1 just be more of the same.
And last but not least, the most effective tool or approach to both mentor as well as coach your team that you lead.
Okay. Tools to coach and mentor. I believe in radical candor. I believe in difficult feedback and feedback very often. That's not pleasant, but I do think that is actually the thing that helps folks develop and get better, and the whole team to get better. So that's what I practice. Even if that's uncomfortable sometimes, but radical candor, feedback, direct and often.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time, schooling us a bit on the trailer telematics market, but also sharing with us a bit about what you're working on with the FleetPulse team up in Chi-Town. We look forward to your ongoing success.
Well, thanks so much. Thanks for having me, Tosh.
Cheers.
Thanks for watching. Follow us at dynamo.vc for all the latest episodes. We'll see you next time.